Joining me in studio is independent commentator and former diplomat Tom Wheeler, who was based in the United States in the 60s and 80s. Tom, thank you for coming through. Really appreciate it. Good to see you.
Pleasure, Andre.
Let's start with those terror attacks that we saw in Istanbul this week. Donald Trump has made comments. Hillary Clinton has made comments. To what degree would you say that it's simply right-wing and left-wing rhetoric from what we've heard so far from the two?
Well, I think the matter is serious enough that you almost expect them to comment, whatever the comments were, because this is an indication that ISIS, the Islamic State terrorist organization from Syria, has actually got into Turkey and has caused this. These people arrived in a taxi with bombs attached to their bodies and blew themselves up, killing all those people in the airport.
Which is not a great thing at all for the world. But Tom, when we see these kind of things taking place, how much does that assist, if we can use that word in this instance, Donald Trump and the Republicans who come from the right side of the political spectrum?
It'd be very difficult to say whether it would, because it's far away. It's, you know, obviously Turkey is a member of NATO and and as is the United States, of course. So they're allies, and the United States has been involved in bombing ISIS places in Syria, and also using a Turkish airbase in the south of the country, Incirlik, for launching their aircraft that do that bombing. So there is a, you know, the two countries do work together on this issue. And I suppose that's why ISIS has decided that they're going to take it out on the Turks.
And speaking of working together on the issue, reports coming out of Turkey saying that the Turks will be depending on the United States to help them in terms of their recovery from this. Is that standard on the international stage, would you say?
It's a difficult one to say. You know, they're a pretty strong country on their own. But obviously any form of help will be important, particularly the reputation of Ataturk Airport in Istanbul, where the you know, people are transiting. Some of those people were flying from, say, from New York to Japan via Turkey, via Ataturk Airport. So in that sense, to build confidence in the safeness of the airport is important.
Right, Tom, I'm going to ask you to stay right there, and we'll continue to have our conversation shortly as we turn our attention to Brexit, the United Kingdom deciding in a referendum to leave the European Union. Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton are their respective parties' presumptive presidential nominees after securing the rights during the primary process. And the clash between the two candidates is showcasing the race to the White House, which will only become more brutal with Britain deciding to exit the EU. And it seems that the right wing has capitalized best so far. Enter Donald Trump.
It's been a tumultuous week for the US market after Britain decided to leave the European Union, but Republican candidate Donald Trump hailed the news as fantastic during a visit in Scotland.
I think people really see a big parallel. A lot of people are talking about that, and not only the United States but other countries. People want to take their country back. They want to have independence in a sense, and you see it with Europe, all over Europe. You're going to have more than just, in my opinion, more than just what happened last night. You're going to have, I think, many other cases where they want to take their borders back. They want to take their monetary back. They want to take a lot of things back. They want to be able to have a country again. So I think you're going to have this happen more and more. I really believe that, and I think it's happening in the United States. It's happening by the fact that I've done so well in the polls.
Trump also mocked President Barack Obama, saying no one in the world listens to him.
He's constantly dictating to the world what they should do. The world doesn't listen to him. Obviously, you can see that by the vote. But he's constantly dictating to other countries. So, you know, certainly it doesn't stop at the water's edge with him. And, you know, very importantly, he got it totally wrong. And he's embarrassed. I mean, he's embarrassed by the Supreme Court decision yesterday, which was a real rebuke. And he's very embarrassed by He got involved. I don't know if that was through a friendship with David Cameron. It could have been, and I understand friendship, and I can understand why he did it. I can understand that. But I think it's something he shouldn't have done. It's not his country. It's not his part of the world. He shouldn't have done it. And I actually think that his recommendation perhaps caused it to fail.
After the Republicans' controversial remarks, Clinton took a swipe at him, saying his bombastic comments did more harm than good.
But that's just one issue. The court's role in our country and lives is big. And the next president could appoint 1, 2, maybe 3 justices. And boy, we cannot let that president be Donald Trump, can we?
Even Democratic Vice Presidential pick Elizabeth Warren spoke out against Trump's controversial comments.
Donald Trump cheered on Britain's current crisis, which has sucked billions of dollars out of your retirement accounts because he said, hey, it might bring more rich people to his new golf course.
U.S. stock markets also expressed their concern.
I think it will fundamentally affect the U.S. market over time. I think this is an initial panic, but we have to reprice risk into the future, and that's really what I think is happening right now. Is uncertainty is obviously going to lead to fear, but we have a major repricing of the future.
And as the presidential race continues, the stock markets continue to fall, joining European markets due to worries about the impact of Britain's votes last week to leave the European Union.
In the aftermath of that Brexit vote, Trump has stated that this was a fantastic move made by Britain. Still have Tom Wheeler in studio with us. Tom, would you call that statement by Trump right-wing rhetoric, or does he have a merited viewpoint?
It's a very strange statement because I don't think that Brexit has any impact on the United States at all. So, what was behind the statement escapes me, I'm afraid to say.
I want to elaborate a little bit on that from an economic point of view. South Africa being affected by Brexit, or allegedly going to be affected by Brexit. So many other countries have said that it'll make trade difficult now because you have the separate entity of the UK and the EU now, as opposed to them being one bloc in the past. So from that point of view, is it a case of just renegotiating treaties with the United States, or how will it work?
Yes, there's a 2-year period during which Britain and the EU will have to negotiate how the withdrawal takes place. As far as South Africa is concerned, there are 2 agreements. There's what they call a recently negotiated partnership between the SADC countries and the EU, which makes the import of goods easier. And then there was an earlier one, which was several years old now, which also had the same effect. Now, how those 2 will split, I don't know. But one of the good things for South Africa that comes out of this is that a lot of investors are worried about the value of the currency, and they're moving their investments into gold. Now, gold being one of the exports from South Africa, it's pushing the price of gold up and meaning more income for South Africa.
Which is not a bad thing from our point of view.
Of course.
Absolutely. I just want to talk about that gold standard. It was Richard Nixon, if I remember correctly, that actually removed the dollar from the gold standard. Could you just explain to people who may have heard that story but didn't quite understand what that actually meant at the time?
Well, I suppose, I'm not sure that I do know the answer to that one. But
it's a difficult one, isn't it?
That the dollar was linked to a certain quantity of gold.
Okay.
And so that would, by removing it, it allowed the dollar to move up and down freely.
All right, Tom, we'll continue the conversation with you in just a second as we move to the next part of our chat. With the economies across the world being affected and markets dropping after Britain's decision to leave the European Union, Trump has found ways to capitalize on the situation. Both American presidential candidates have different opinions on how to improve the American economy.